Good afternoon. Welcome to Third Thursday Advocacy Insights for May. We have a special guest today. Mark Elliott with the Chartered Institute of Environmental Health is going to talk to us about environmental health in the UK and changes that have occurred over there and the new direction, some of the new directions that they're facing with changes to policy. To get things kicked off, there is a lot going on in Washington, D.C. As we speak as of today, we are looking at a whole restructuring of environmental health in our country at the federal level. We don't know how that's going to play out. We do not know what Congress is going to agree to, but it will be up to Congress to make those ultimate decisions. We may not know the results of whether Congress will agree with the administration until July 4th, which is now the current deadline for the big, beautiful bill to get over to get on the president's desk. But in the meantime, we have fiscal year 26 coming up, and that's going to have a huge implication on how much funding FDA gets, how much funding we have for environmental health, what happens to the National Center for Environmental Health, and the other programs at the federal level regarding environmental health. So we do have some challenges coming up, which we will talk about in the coming months. But for today, I'm really happy to have Mark Elliott with us. Mark is the president of the Chartered Institute of Environmental Health. He is in Haverfordwest in Wales. And with that, I'm going to introduce Mark. Do you want to tell us a little bit about yourself and about the Chartered Institute?
Thank you, Doug. Well, first of all, thank you for the invitation to come on this podcast with you today and all your viewers. I hope I'll give all of your viewers some sort of interesting things to learn about us in the UK. I mean, first of all, I'd better say a little bit about the Chartered Institute of Environmental Health, shortened to CIEH normally. We're the voice of environmental health in Wales, England, and Northern Ireland. Scotland has REHIS, which is quite a separate organisation, but we work collaboratively with them, and we'd like to work collaboratively with all environmental health organisations across the world. But we were set up in 1883, believe it or not. We've got about 7,500 members, and I'm the 34th president. The first one was Sir Edwin Chadwick in 1883, and wrote this tomb of a paper about the sanitary conditions of the labouring classes in the UK, which kicked it off.
His name is on the at the King's College, isn't he? They got his name engraved in stone there, don't they?
I think it is, yeah. So, but we're now known as the CIEH, but we started off as something like, I think it was the Association of Public Sanitary Inspectors, and then we had various name changes, including ourselves. For example, at the very beginning, when the first public Public Health Acts came up in 1848, I think we were known as inspectors of nuisances, and then became sanitary inspectors, then we became public health inspectors, and then finally environmental health officers. So we've had a long chain of 142 years of doing this job.
How long have you not been a sanitarian? When did they change over from sanitarian to environmental health?
Environmental health came, I've got to check my notes here because it's quite complicated, but we became environmental health officers in about, I think it was 1994, I think it was.
Oh, 1994. Yeah. Okay. We became
before.
environmental health in 1970.
Right,
so
okay.
It's been a quite a long time, but that's interesting. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. Please continue.
No, sorry, but I'm looking at 1981. We became environmental health officers. Before that, we were public health inspectors. But what's interesting about those titles is if you look at what we do as environmental health practitioners, let's call us that, a lot of that work is public health work, isn't it? It's not just environmental health work. So it's quite interesting to see the name changes for me over time. Not that I'm getting on a bit now, but I wasn't around when we were called public health inspectors. I mean, my my history is I trained with Cardiff City Council as an environmental health officer, sort of a day release thing at those. They're a bit like an apprenticeship, and had a diploma. I learned on the job with Cardiff, very good, loads of things going on. I was in court every week. I remember the first time I went into court to do an abatement notice for nuisance procedures. This is true. My knees were knocking, okay? They were knocking. Okay? But by the end of my 6 years before I moved down to West Wales, I'd have a right old ding-dong with a defence solicitor on a food safety, food hygiene case. I bring it on, at the end. So I had a great training with Cardiff, learnt loads, did loads of things, and then I just sort of moved up the ranks, as it were. But and this is the important point for everyone. I've always been a member of the Chartered Institute of Environmental Health. When I was a student, I joined. So I'm sad to say that in 2 years' time, I think I'll have my 50th year certificate. But I've always put something.
And can we transfer over to that? A little bit of a segue right there. What did the Chartered Institute for Environmental Health offer you and offer the profession in the UK?
Right. Back then, we used to have, and God, you remember, I've gone a career in the office without technology, really. The only technology that when I started was a telephone, a typewriter, and a pen and paper. And over these last 40 years, well, you know where we are now. And
right.
Of course, you actually met physically on a monthly basis with your colleagues and peers in a local region. And that was always organised by the Chartered Institute of Environmental Health. You'd have a branch secretary, a branch treasurer, these things that people would all come to the meetings. And then every year you'd have an annual general meeting and so on. And I remember reading the book by Robert Putnam, Bowling Alone, American author, about even in America, yeah. I understand these things, just like in the UK, have stopped. People actually belonging to these physical bodies and doing things, and it's all become online, as it were. So the CIEH organised these things, and we'd have presentations, share information, and you exchange knowledge. And I did that for many, many years, and I sort of worked up the ranks and became a trustee of the board back in early 2000.
So with the Chartered Institute was somewhat, when you began, more of a convener, a way for everybody to get together and share information. How is it now, since you're not meeting face to face?
I should also say that we're also the CIEH is a professional body looking after the standards of the profession. So it would
okay.
At the same time, it would, I became a member, and you have to become a member. There's various steps you have to do. So when people see member of the CIEH, they've got certain credentials and qualifications.
Okay, wait, yeah. What credentials do you need to become a member?
First and foremost, you need certain qualifications. So you come through A levels, and then you can get into the profession. The normal routes are a BS, Bachelor in Science degree in Environmental Health.
Okay.
We do get a lot of what we call mature entrants now who might be in another profession, and they suddenly learn about environmental health. We call it like the best secret profession going. People don't realize we're here.
We say the same thing.
Yeah, and once they know, I want to be one of those, so they give up whatever job they're doing, and they take a shorter course, a master's in science in environmental health to do over. Once they've got that qualification, then they can start down the route of registration with the CIEH, which controls how you actually end up being a qualified environmental health practitioner.
So you do need to have background in science. You need to have a training in science background in environmental health, or can it be any science course?
It's to get on the course. You might have some science A levels, but then if you do the environmental health, then you do the environmental health degree, and then become registered as a practitioner, I'll call it. You have to go through our sort of standards and exams to do that, and various portfolios, so that you actually become registered as a professional environmental health practitioner.
And how long does a registration last? Is this a 2-year registration, or does it go on forever?
I don't know. It won't go on forever. As far as I'm aware, I'm not the expert on this, I'll have to say. It's fairly tightly controlled. Obviously, there's always problems. You might have an extension, but basically the practitioner has to submit various things, do the exam, and if they pass, they become registered on the register, as it were. So you can look it up and say Mark Elliott or another. he's a qualified environmental health officer practitioner.
Gotcha.
So what I'm saying here.
So once you get registered, you're on a list, and it probably makes it a lot easier if you say, well, I'd like to go to London. I want to move and do some work in Newhouse or wherever. It's complimentary. They know you're qualified.
In England, Wales, and Northern Ireland, they know you're qualified. We've got a reciprocal arrangement with Scotland, and I can actually tell you something this is hot off the press, and I'll have to get up early on. I'll have to get up early on Tuesday morning because we're just about to sign a memorandum of understanding with Australia, Environmental Health Australia, and what that means is it's being worked on by the academics and endorsed by the Chartered Institute, so that if you are a qualified environmental health practitioner in the UK and in England, Wales, and Northern Ireland, to be specific, you can transfer those skills to Australia, and they'll recognise you there, and vice versa. And this is a first, as far as I'm aware, that we've done this. And if the Australian qualified environmental health practitioner comes over, they only have to do a little bit of, I think, on housing to meet our standards, and then they can work here in England, Wales, and Northern Ireland. So I think that's quite exciting. But say that's hot off the press, being actually signed on, for me, about 7:30 next Tuesday morning, 7:30 in the morning.
I'm going to put that in my calendar and let it buzz and say, hey, we've got an agreement between CIEH and Australia. That's fantastic to hear. So in Australia, you have to go through high credentialing standards to become an EH professional, just like certified, just like in the UK.
Yeah, can I just say a real big thanks to all the people involved in Australia and in CIEH here and the academic institutions in England, Wales, and Northern Ireland to actually come up and produce this. You know, it's not an easy thing to do, actually. And I've been following it. I've been part of the process, but I have to sign it off, as it were, as the president. And I'll say congratulations to everyone. This is happening Tuesday morning for me anyway. And I think I'll be on a screen because they've got an event that evening in Brisbane, and they'll have their dinner or whatever, or finished it, and then I'll pop up on some screen, and their president will be there signing, and I'll be on the screen signing, and clap and trebles all around, hopefully. So
well, you know, and I think it's going to be worthwhile for you to get up early and get a suit on and look great for an evening event at 7:30 in the morning. Hey, could you talk to us a little bit? What happens? What is the daily activity of an environmental health professional in the UK? I mean, how much do you do food service? Do you do housing? What's the average day look like?
Well, when I joined the CIEH back in 1978, it was mainly a male profession, and it was mainly, and I'm really high percentages, probably 90%, well over 90, probably 95%. We all worked in government, local government, you know, local government that did this sort of legislation and made sure environmental health was delivered. 40 years later, and we're talking about now, we've seen a massive change. I think I'm right in saying that the percentage of female-male, I think there's more female environmental health practitioners now than male. And the other interesting thing, Doug, is whereas we were like 90-odd% in local government, it's probably dropped to about 60%. Now we've got many, many members in the private sector. We've got them in the third sector, charities or whatever, and of course a large chunk in the military as well. So I'll talk a little bit about, we're all doing the same thing, but with different, shall we say, arrows in your quiver or something. But for talking about local government, where I did 40 years, what's happened over that time, when I was working back 30 years ago, I used to have what you call a patch. And I would do everything on that patch, from housing, environmental protection, pollution, food, a lot of meat inspection in those days, because we used to control slaughterhouses. I was thinking some health and safety, office stuff like that. I'd do everything. If I wasn't quite skilled in something, I'd ask a colleague who was skilled up in that. I think I was skilled at the time in environmental protection stuff, you know. So we'd share knowledge, and you have a patch, and you'd solve problems because you had this array of knowledge about doing things. Over time, what's happened with, I should also say that when I started, this is the important point, some of our colleagues went through their working life with 3 pieces of legislation: the Housing Act 57, the Public Health Act 36, and the Food and Drugs Act 55, right? So
we better put a little time out there. Okay. What is the Housing Act of 57?
Well, that was
do housing for the most part.
Okay, housing was basically making sure housing standards were fit to live in. Houses were fit to live in because there was so much unfit housing. And food and drugs is what it says, making sure food was safe and restaurants were safe and all that. And then the Public Health Act dealt with like everything else really, like nuisances and maybe noise stuff and all that. I'm not going to bore everyone with all the legislation, but the point I'm making is this: you'd learn that legislation and you could go through most of your career. But there came a big sea change in about 30 years ago, probably 1974 onwards, where new legislations came in, but it didn't stop there. It kept on coming. So new regulations are made all the time. So it became very difficult to be the general person of everything. And you started to go down these channels of specialization because you couldn't keep up. You know, you just couldn't keep up with everything going on. So again, sorry, trying to answer your point. So today, you find environmental health practitioners in this country are specialized in various areas. So for example, if you're a food safety specialist, your day will be, you'll have a list of premises to inspect, perhaps maybe a list of complaints that have come in that you might have to juggle and do those as well. And so that's what your day would be, dealing with things like that. Whereas the housing specialist would deal with housing complaints and making sure, you know, if a tenant is complaining that the landlord hasn't repaired the roof or whatever, and then going on to environment.
Well, it's a landlord tenant. It's not private housing that you have to go after. It's public.
It's basically landlord and tenants that we
landlord
deal with.
Landlord tenant, okay.
Majority of owner occupiers obviously keep their house to a standard that probably wouldn't fail any legislation. So nowadays it's much more specialized. That's where I'm coming from. So environmental health practitioners starting their day would have work to do, but they'd be looking at their specialism. They do jump across now and again and say, right, I've done enough food, I want to move on to something else. But that's what would happen. I'm talking about local government there, which is about 60% of our members do it. But then if you were in the private sector, for example, working for a large supermarket or something, your job there would obviously be making sure that supermarket, making sure that all the standards the legislation are kept up to requirements. You know, it's the same thing, really.
Private supermarket, obviously you want to be following the rules. That's understood. But still, even if you're following the rules, you don't want bad food out there. You don't want spoiled milk. You don't want bad cheese. All the things that make a grocery store quality and make it so somebody wants to get to it. So, yeah, and it's interesting. You know, it's not just 3 laws anymore. It sounds like the industry itself really wants environmental health practitioners.
Yeah, sorry, the industry, private sector particularly, always employing environmental health practitioners. Wasn't the case 30, 35 years ago, but now you can choose where you want to work, you know, whereas local government, private sector, and the military offer some fantastic careers now. You can go in and train with the military, be it the Army, Navy or Air Force, and go to a university degree course specifically for the military, and then come out and then you're qualified. And I suppose the other thing I've seen over my years is, lots of changes. Food safety and food hygiene has been an interesting one. When I left Cardiff in '85, there were 2 of us doing food hygiene and food safety across the whole of city, 300,000 population. Now I think they must have 25 or 30, and we've also improved things. Like
a city of 300,000 has 25 people.
Well,
doing.
I don't, please no one quote me exactly on that, but it's a damn sight more than 2 of us back in '85. And the other thing that's come in, I think California might have led in this, is putting food hygiene rating scheme. We put a sticker on
the scores on the doors.
Yeah. That's been very, very successful across England, Wales, and Northern Ireland. It has raised standards incredibly, and that's a good plus point, which the CIEH and other organisations, environmental health organisations, were involved in pushing that along. So that's really, really, really good. So
That's yeah, and that's fascinating about how the profession has evolved over the past 50 years, and especially the impact of private sector coming in and the demand for the environmental health profession. But what do you kind of see in the future? What are going to be some of your biggest challenges coming up as you see things change?
One of the biggest challenges right now, is capacity and capability. There's a massive demand for environmental health practitioners. I think people recognize, or the government recognizes, that what we do is preventive work. And if you look at the National Health Service in this country, it's like the way to think of it is as a fast-flowing river. And what we're doing as environmental health practitioners, and everything we do, is stopping people falling in the river. Rather than
again, I gotta stop you real quick. National Health Service and environmental health. We don't have a National Health Service here. We have Obamacare, and it has nothing to do with environmental health. How the National Health Service, environmental health, can you just give us a line or two about where it overlaps?
The National Health Service, set up by NEHA Bevan back in 1948, I think it was, a Welshman again there from the valleys, based on subscription services. The National Health Service, the demand has been increasing like incredibly over the years. Lots of reasons for that. People not eating the right things, probably not exercising enough. So getting ill, shall we say, when perhaps they shouldn't be. And of course, they're dealing with all these people. So what environmental health what we do is prevent people becoming ill in the first place. And, if you think of the stuff that we do as environmental health practitioners, that could be from, improving air quality, for example, right? A lot of work done in that, in London in particular. There was a case in the coroner's court a few years ago where on the death certificate, the coroner put down that due to the air quality that this young person died. It's tragic. So if you think about how, if we can improve air quality, for example, as environmental health practitioners, we're preventing people coming ill and then being a burden on the NHS. I mean, that's one example.
And that's a great point. And I think that's something we need to highlight over here, is that because in England, you have a National Health Service, environmental health is very key. Over here, we just have had Obamacare for about 10 years, but I think it changes the paradigm. The paradigm now is that if you get sick, it's the government's problem. And if it's the government's problem, then we need to start doing things to make sure the environment is not causing these problems. And that's something you have faced for the past 70 years.
Yeah, well, that's what we're trying to do all the time. We're doing a bit of work with CIEH at the moment, actually, and we've just had a new strategy that we've just adopted from 2025, which has got about 3 core areas. But one of the things we're trying to do, because at the end of the day, you've got to get politicians to be on your side, recognizing, hey, this organization, these people are worth pushing because they're going to save us money in the long run. And we're doing a piece of work on the cost benefits of environmental health, what it actually means. Very hard to measure.
That would be great. Can I get a copy?
Yeah, it'll be public in due course, and I won't forget.
Okay,
and if I forget, just email me, Doug, and I'll send it to you. Because I'm a great believer, and I don't believe in reinventing the wheel. And if you've got a great document, I'll take it off you, please. Thank you. But I will put up, hey, I got this from the USA. This is brilliant. Yeah.
Yeah, this would be something that would be absolutely vital for folks over here to say, look, the environment, here's the data that shows the environment protects public health, and public health is a key part. Keeping the public healthy is a key part, because now it costs us. It costs us with Medicaid, with Medicare, with everything.
Exactly. And that's, if you can get these figures for the government to try and say, right, okay, we need to put more resources into this special, call it a field, environmental health practitioners, it'll save us money in the long run. But getting politicians to do something that they might not get a payback for many years or quite a few years,
right,
as opposed to the next election, is always difficult. But I think we're getting there, actually. And one of the things we're trying to do at the moment, this is interesting, actually, in the House of Commons in London, in Westminster, there's set up things called all-party parliamentary groups, APPGs they're called, and we're actually trying to establish one for environmental health. They're quite powerful things, and we get a certain number of signatures from members of parliament, so hopefully we can set one of those up sooner rather than later, so we can still bang the drum.
It is called a parliamentary group?
All-party parliamentary group. Basically, it's made up of whatever parties want to be along, what MP. So you might have Labour, Conservatives, Lib Dems, Greens, whatever, and they come together. They've all got interest in environmental health, and they can make reports, and say, hey, these guys are doing a great job. They need to do more, do something about it. So it's quite a powerful thing, and we've need about 20 signatures. I think we were on about 15 or 16. So hopefully we'll set up that soon. So if that does come to fruition, hopefully we'll get some good reports coming out of it to try and move environmental health along. But
it's really to show environmental health is a good return on investment, that environmental health saves money.
Yeah, two things there. That's exactly what you said. And the other one as well is if there is an issue, environmental health issue that's causing morbidity and mortality, we should be addressing it full stop. Forget about the return. That just follows axiomatically for me. But there's various things going on. So when you just talked about challenges, demand is we've really got, one of the things we're trying to do is ramp up the intake of new people onto the degree courses to become environmental health practitioners.
More into the profession.
Yeah.
More into the sciences.
Yeah. I go to schools and give career talks, trying to get them interested. And you agreed with me that no one knows about us really. So it's a job of waving the flag and saying, this is a great job. And if you actually look into it rather than, becoming something else, you'll like it. You're not stuck in an office. You're out and about. You're your own boss. You're solving problems. And hopefully we've seen a dip in numbers going to the degree courses, and we're just starting to creep up again. So maybe some of the work we're doing is paying off now, but we need 30 on the courses, 30 every year on the BSc courses, and they have dropped quite low. So
yeah, we have that same problem over here. People are not signing up, but it's because they don't know, they're not familiarizing. We're trying to do internships, but one of our battles is that politicians think the answer to get more people in is to lower the standards and get less science, less credentialing. Yeah. But that's you'll get more people in, but you get lower quality people in. And I don't think that's a smart way to go.
No, one thing we've been pushing, they've got it in England, but not in Wales, but it might come, is apprenticeships, because it costs a lot of money now to say do a 3-year BSc environmental health course. You end up with a massive debt. So apprenticeships are coming along, and I think they're the way forward. And they're really useful, I think, because the person is attached, say, to a council, and then they're in college, they're back in the council learning on the ropes and getting paid. So it becomes much more attractive.
It's an intern. It's a paid internship.
Yeah, that's another description. I haven't heard that in here, but yeah, that works. So they're getting money, and that's how I learned. I did a college block release course. So I was in college for a term. Then I was in Cardiff City Council learning on the ropes. And then back in college. Great way to learn, rather than you go to college, you learn all the theory, then all of a sudden you're thrown in the deep end and thinking, wow, I've got to do something. So
I like the way you put it. Don't drown.
The one thing I came out of college in Cardiff with at the end was I realized, and it wasn't taught then, but it is taught now, speaking to lecturers, is communication skills. It's not.
That's interesting. Okay.
It's not about, I've got this act behind me and I can take you to court. That's a failure for me if I have to use it. I like talking to people, be it a restaurant owner, and say, come on, this is why you have to do this. And once you get them on board, on side, everything becomes easier, and they do more than you even wanted.
Well, my friend in Philadelphia, she runs the environmental health department there, and she was saying, 80 to 90% of the people out there, of my clients, not a problem. They work with me. It's at 15% that gives you a hard time. Is you feel the same way over there? You got like about 15% that just don't buy into it.
Yeah, I'd probably say the Pareto principle: 20% causes 80% of the problems. So
Yeah.
yeah, so yeah, same thing. I agree with you entirely. There are always some people who, for whatever reason, they will never listen to you. I don't know why they do it, and you have to use the strong arm of the law.
I'm going to ask some tough questions now. You are living in a very international community. You've got people from all over the world. Are there certain cultures that are more, I hate to say problematic, but are more not amenable to current food code policy, or are there certain cooking practices that may be more of a challenge for you to look at?
Certainly in my career, and I did quite a bit of food safety, and you picked on food safety. The answer to my knowledge and what I've learned and experienced is no. It's not so much that. It's an individual person, wherever they are, who for some reason doesn't like authority or doesn't want to do anything. So it all more to do with the person.
It's really not going to matter about the culture. You're going to have Welsh people being a pain and people from overseas being a pain.
Yeah, and if you follow the local press here, you'll see everyone sort of being prosecuted, regardless if they're not playing ball and doing what they should do. We do have a few issues, and I'm aware of this in England and in Wales, where there's some practices which are outlawed and they still carry on doing them. Like there's a thing called smokies, about burning lamb sheep carcasses. It's like a delicacy.
Oh, okay.
Which is not
lamb sheep carcasses. But that's great. Yeah. I'm sorry. Keep going.
Yeah. So I mean, we deal with things like that, but in general, I would say it's down to the individual, whoever they might be, that you get an issue with for whatever reason. Whatever reason, it might be money issues, it might be other things going on, or they just don't like authority and they think they know best. But
well, and then you had a very unique situation, meaning for a while, part of your career, you were part of the European Union, and then Brexit came and you're back. Have the standards, has the transition, one, going over to the European Union, and two, coming back out of it, how has that impacted environmental health?
When we were in the European Union, we had standards being introduced by EU, and we used to adopt them in this country. What's happened since leaving is, in the main, those standards have been kept in British law. So we're not drifting apart really at the moment.
Okay.
The main issues in terms of environmental health that I've certainly noticed and seen is, because you've got this border now, we're not part of the European Union, is inspecting products, especially of animal and plant origin, coming into the country. And I don't think we were quite ready for that in terms of resources and facilities. So that's been a bit of an issue to make sure that they meet the standards. But that's about it as far as food and animal plant origin. Some of the other things in terms of asylum seekers coming into the country, we had some successes at CIEH where they've come into this country, they've got accommodation, that we've managed to influence the government to make sure that people coming in as asylum seekers, and while they're being processed or whatever, they have accommodation that is suitable and safe and fit. Because I think at one point that wasn't going to be part of the legislation, but I think we won that one. Gotcha. So yeah. So.
But now, and that's that's interesting as we become more international, and as you talked about your work you're doing with Australia, and that's something that gets like a standard. When you produce something in the UK, almost anywhere, you want to have an international market, which really kind of leads us to a certain international standards that I think you guys have to enforce. Have you looked at that as part of CIEH? CIEH?
What, to have this standardization across the world? Is that where you're coming from? Well, not really, no. I mean, I say this Australia MOU, Memorandum of Understanding, is the first. And have had conversations. I mean, it's just conversations about, I mean, whether that should be expanded. Yeah. I mean, I don't know. We have talks with NEHA, I don't know.
Right.
Because the world is shrinking, as you know, in terms of, you can travel everywhere at the moment anyway. So actually having standardization that we could interact in terms of, even if it's only coming over for a sabbatical or working for a couple of years, it would be interesting.
Well, and of course we have that wonderful program between our two associations where folks from the UK would come over to the US and people from the US would come over to the UK. I was a recipient of one of those, and what a wonderful experience it was for me. If we could, I would always recommend, let's try to figure out a way to make that happen again. I just want to kind of close up with a couple things here because I don't want to take your entire day, even though I think we could. But tell us, what do you see for the next set of challenges for the profession? Where do we need to be prepared for the next generation of environmental health practitioners? What are they going to have to be facing?
There's a wonderful quote which I give in some of my talks or lectures I do. Simple one: if you don't know your history, you are destined to repeat it. And I think some of these things come round, don't they, in circles, and the older I get, perhaps it's coming around the second time, I don't know. So, there's basic environmental health issues that are never going to go away, right? I think, talk a little bit about food issues, the housing issues in this country that we deal with. Health and safety never goes away. And let's not forget infectious diseases and the COVID outbreak, and we were heavily involved with that, our members, all the time, testing, tracing, and all that. So I think those things will always be with us. And if you don't keep an eye on them, they'll grow. So I think that's one thing.
It's going to be with us no matter where you are in the world, too. Exactly. And that's the interesting thing. The profession is necessary.
Yeah, and a couple of things for the future, as it were, and I'm just thinking now, because I did a blog on it. Artificial intelligence was going to be very interesting in how it affects us, environmental health. My view is to my colleagues, is we need to grasp it and be at the table, not on the menu for it, so we can shape it, how it works for us. Another thing I've got as one of my presidential themes, as well as capacity, because we've talked about that, so I won't go over that. We need to sort out capacity, make sure you've got enough environmental health practitioners coming into the profession, is water. Water.
Okay.
To me, it's a basic human right, and if you don't have it, what's going to happen? You're going to die. Simple as that.
Yeah.
And we've had some issues in the UK with water supply, and in terms of disposal, sewage as well. You might have picked up in the press, I don't know. To me, it's been monetized, and perhaps it's a real environmental health, public health issue, water. So we need to look at it in a different way, as far as I'm concerned. So that's, to me, with global warming, so that's another point I was trying to come to. Global warming is going to be an issue for us. Water supply, people are saying wars are going to be fought over water in the future, and this might not interest your members, or it might, because it's a bit of a funny subject which I've got into recently. If I said to you there was a terrible helicopter crash and plane crash in Washington DC on January the 29th, and 69 people tragically died, right? In the UK, and I think this is a public health issue, 67 people die every 14 days, every 2 weeks, on our roads, right? Due to motor vehicles, be it they're pedestrian, they're in a motor vehicle. And when you start talking to people, it's like cars are like, we'll park that. Sorry, the pun, excuse the pun. And I've started doing a little pushing this. It's known as motonormativity, after Professor Ian Walker of Swansea University, who wrote a very interesting paper on it. He did a study, and if you talk to people, they say, just to give you a quick flavour of it, if you talk to people saying someone's smoking in a pub, which is banned, what should we do? And they'll say, oh God, stop it, book them, whatever. And then he drop in some questions about cars. Is someone's speeding down the road, they're doing 10 miles over the speed limit. Is that okay? And they'd say, oh yeah, that's fine. It's a car. We all use cars, and it's called motonormativity. But to me, it's a massive public health problem, because 67 people die every 14 days, and about 1,200 are seriously injured, in wheelchairs, brain injuries. And we all love our cars, don't we? And America's is a car culture. I've been over quite a few times, and I can't cross the road. I've got to get in the car. So.
We could get into walkability, and too. We have both our associations, NEHA and the Chartered Institute, have so much in common about the problems we have out there. I think what I'm going to come away with it is you have a history that goes back over 100 years, 150 years of looking at environmental health and how the environment impacts health. And you also have a history going back 70 years where you had the National Health Service look at environmental health as a value to protect the public. I see us having a lot more in common than we have not in common. We're both looking at the profession. Boy, we've got to get more people involved. And you're right, it's a great profession. People should love doing this. Mark, I'm just going to say thank you for your time today. Thank you for coming on and speaking to us from Wales. I hope it's a beautiful day over there. We're having a great day over here. And as always, I invite you to come out, enjoy Phoenix, come out to our AEC. We would love to have you if you're able to make it.
Doug, thank you very much. It's been an absolute pleasure. And if you want to do it again in the future, please let me know. I'm sure we can start building more things like this between our two organizations. It'll be really good. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mark. You have a great afternoon. We will talk soon. And that's it for Advocacy Insights for May. This is Doug Farquhar. Looking forward to talking to you next month in June. Please tune in third Thursday at 3 o'clock Eastern, 1 o'clock Denver. With that, good afternoon.